Okay, so I'm going to move through this pretty briskly because I previously, like an idiot, recorded this video and didn't record any audio for it. I don't know how I've managed that, but I did. I had about 45 minutes on that video, so this video isn't going to be that long. It's hopefully just going to be about 15 minutes and then we're going to call it a day there because I'm not recording for another 45 minutes. It's almost 7 p.m. We're not going till 8, so we're going to move through this pretty briskly, get to it, get to the main points. You know, it's almost a week on from this anyways, so let's get through this. I'm trying a new kind of video. This is kind of how I want my news videos to be set up. Half of my screen, my face, half of the screen being the article that I'm talking about. We'll move through it. I'll add my own detail. I'll expand on what the article is saying. I'll give my thoughts on what it's saying, and we'll move through it like that. Hopefully this works. If it doesn't, then so be it. Hopefully it is just something that I can work on and get better at. If it's not and it's just terrible, then all right, well, I guess we'll call it a day. But, you know, hopefully I don't think it's going to be that. But anyways, inside Jen Psaki's Amazon MGM exit, James Bond clashes, Citadel misfire, and Mike Hopkins' ambitions for the future. So Jen Psaki, or Jennifer Psaki, was an executive at Amazon Prime. As it says here, she was the head of Amazon MGM Studios, which essentially means she covered television and film. So there was one person who covered the entire television division. There was one that covered the full film division. And then they both reported to Jen Psaki. She then reported to a guy called Mike Hopkins. Mike Hopkins was the head of Amazon MGM Studios and Prime Video. And then that guy reported to the CEO. The CEO reported to Jeff Bezos. So what is interesting about Jen Psaki is that when she entered the company about 7 years ago, 2018, the company was still in its fledgling stage of entertainment. It hadn't greenlit a lot of stuff. It was still very new. It was in this sort of indie style niche sort of phase where it wanted to be a big Hollywood player, but it could not get to that level as of yet. When Jen Psaki came in, she revolutionized and took Amazon Prime Video to another stage where they became one of the premier streaming services in Hollywood and are now at the table every time that there is a conversation about a TV show or about property rights for a book, a remake, something like that. It should be stated when we start this video that without Jen Psaki, Amazon Prime Video would not be in the space that it is today. Amazon MGM Studios would not be in the position it is now, where it is able to compete with Netflix, Paramount Plus, Peacock, Disney Plus, Apple TV, all of these. She is a major reason as to why they are at the table of Hollywood major players. It is just, there's no way around it. She is majorly responsible for that. With that being said, there is a few things in this article that they point to as to why it may be possible that Jen Psaki had faltered over the past few years, and as such, her superiors found it fit to let go of her and move on and take the company possibly in a new direction, which I think we can see from the things that she misfired in. The first one that is on the board is the Amazon James Bond deal. The deal between Amazon Studios and the Broccoli producers, Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, came to a head after the Wall Street Journal published an article saying that the two parties could not meet eye to eye. As part of this, they accused Broccoli, or essentially from sources claimed that she had said that the Amazon seniors were fucking idiots that she didn't trust, and she would never allow them to expand the Bond franchise the way that she believes they wanted to do. So it is interesting that in the aftermath of the Jen Psaki reign, the first thing that gets a press release is the Bond producers being announced, Amy Pascal and David Heyman. It is interesting because every major press release during her reign obviously came with a quote from her talking about what this meant for the future of Amazon Studios. So, for there to be a press release about the thing that potentially was the trigger for her getting fired, and it not to include a quote from her, it speaks a message that Amazon Prime Video is attempting to send, or Amazon Studios overall is attempting to send, which is that this company is moving in a new direction. And the new direction includes James Bond being at the heart of its entertainment arm. So, if Jen Psaki, as was reported, referred to James Bond as content and rubbed the broccoli producers in such the wrong way that they refused to budge on it, then it seems completely possible that after a slew of mistakes over a series of years and an apparent power struggle with one of her superiors, which we will get into, it seems completely possible to me that this served as the trigger on a smoking gun where Mike Hopkins and his superiors went, we're done with this person and we need to move in a new direction because she is holding us back. So I think that we are looking here at a studio going, thank you for what you've done, but it's time to move on. And I think we'll see evidence of them saying thank you when we get to her first look production deal. Or actually, let's just talk about it now. We'll skip to the end of the article and then we'll go back. So in this paragraph, they discuss what is next for Jen Psaki. And they talk about how production deals in Hollywood are rare these days. They aren't just given out the way that they used to be. Like, oh, you're leaving the company? Great, we'll give you a production deal. And then we still can keep sort of tabs on what you're doing. And if it's so good, then we don't feel bad about letting you go because we can still get your next project. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but it has happened in this case. So it's a bit interesting that all the murmurings and that all signs seem to point at Amazon moving in a different direction and Amazon being unhappy with what has happened over the past few years, and yet them still offering her a production deal. Or a first look production deal, sorry. That seems to suggest to me that they wanted to offer her a thanks whilst also saying, we don't want you in charge of our big productions anymore, but if you find something that we believe is worth looking at, we'll sign off on it and let that be your thank you. And also, please don't talk shit about us. And I think that it couples as sort of a bit of a gag and a thank you. So yeah, I think that this serves as both of those things. I think it serves as both a carrot and a stick in some sense of, we don't want you here, but also we're thankful for what you've done. And please don't make this toxic for us because we don't want that kind of bad press. So I think that's very interesting. I think in some sense, Amazon's actually seemingly has done right by one of their executives of saying, well, we're going to let you go, but we don't want to be too mean about it. We don't want to slam the door on the way out sort of situation. I think that's very interesting to me. I am also interested in seeing what she comes out with next, and also saying, what does Amazon do? Do they shift, as I believe they might? So for one, I believe that Amazon might shift because in this paragraph they discuss Mike Hopkins' memo to staffers, where he says, we will be taking a couple of weeks to have thoughtful conversations with Jen's directs and others to finalize the ideal long-term structure for the Amazon MGM Studios organization as a whole, and we'll have more to share on that work soon. That suggests to me that there's going to be some sort of layoffs where Amazon says these people aren't required anymore because we're moving in a new direction, and that direction isn't the direction that Jen Psaki envisioned for this company. Now, again, what that is, we don't know. It's too early to tell, but it is certainly, in my opinion, with James Bond at the heart of that. And it would seem silly to me that they would place James Bond at the heart, say, okay, we're going to cover this in prestige, in pretense, and treat it with the respect and the dignity it deserves, and then surround it with a lot of shitty, terrible, straight to DVD sort of movies. So in my opinion, I think this does suggest a switch. I think that we could potentially see Amazon going for, yes, the big commercial movies that they've always gone for, but also coveting well-esteemed directors and writers and actors and producers who want to work on high-class productions on big-budget movies with their own final cut rights on films. I think we could see Amazon operating in that space of a studio going, well, we'll do the big commercial films, but we'll also do the sort of pretentious films. Pretentious, not in a bad way, that I love as well. I think that this almost gives the feel of an old school studio rather than a new modern streaming service. And again, I'm not, I don't know if I'm correct, I am speculating, but it seems likely to me that Amazon may be moving in this direction and just didn't see Jen Psaki as the person to deliver on that. And I think that some of her missteps outside of James Bond suggest that. So I think the two that suggest that that are mentioned in this article are Citadel, the Russo brothers' major TV franchise, and then The Rings of Power. To start with, The Lord of the Rings of Power was incredibly expensive, and as such had astronomical expectations. It also had the expectations of a major franchise, one of the most well-respected franchises in history, in film history, that needed to be treated with a level of dignity and prestige that it just doesn't, or it didn't get, unfortunately. At best, The Rings of Power has mixed reviews, I would say. At worst, the majority of people hate it. So whilst she didn't greenlight this, and ultimately this was something that she had to navigate, as Variety says, because this was Jeff Bezos' personal obsession, his personal pet project that he put $1 billion of Amazon's money into, it is worrying that this was a first major misstep and it cost the company $1 billion. And whilst with the Russo brothers project that we'll come on to in a second, it's not as big as that, there is a history at Amazon between these two projects and even a couple others, I think, of spending a lot of money and then it falling flat on its face. And The Lord of the Rings of Power is the biggest example of that, where if you're putting $1 billion into a product, it needs to be successful. There's no if, buts, or maybes. It has to be the biggest product of all time. GTA 6 is coming out this year, and it will be the biggest entertainment product of all time because they've put $1 billion into that production. For it to not succeed is ridiculous. I don't think blame falls squarely on her. It has to in some sense. Even if you think that production is good, I just don't think it can be, oh, it's good. It has to be one of the best shows ever. And even if for people that like it, they didn't like it that much. And so then after that, you had the Russo brothers expanded or attempted expanded universe, Citadel, led by Priyanka Chopra and Michael Madden. This show is, again, interesting because it's the second most expensive series of all time. And that it's the second most expensive series after The Rings of Power. And it cost originally $160 million budget for just the first season. And then after reshoots, it cost apparently an additional $90 million. That's insane for a TV show. I think, again, it represents a misstep where she has attempted to bring in these big budget directors, these big budget actors, and big budgets in general. And it just hasn't came off very well. And I wonder if, whilst James Bond might have been the smoking gun, I wonder if a couple of these incidents became too many and it was, look at how much money this is costing us. Do we need to go in a different direction? And she talks, interestingly, in this paragraph about creative conviction really rules the day, but you have to be right a lot, which is another Amazon principle, she said. So if you got plenty of conviction and you're wrong all the time, I don't think we'd be sitting in our jobs very long. You could be wrong sometimes, though, because you want to embrace risk. Now, it's all right and well embracing risk, and I think more studios should embrace more risk. But if you're embracing $1 billion project, and if you're embracing a plus $200 million TV show, it has to come off. To some extent, it has to come off. You're dealing with the two most expensive TV shows of all time, and it has to work out in some way. They're just, again, there cannot be no if, buts, or maybes. It has to work. And for both of these shows to fail, it shows to me in some sense that they weren't learning from their mistakes. They weren't getting better with what they were doing. They were actually just sort of stagnating and continuing to waste money. This isn't me saying that Mike Hopkins is all that great, and it's not me saying that he is going to be the guy that changes it and makes it better. I actually think that he's went for a power grab is somewhat concerning if you're interested in purely just the films, which of course we are on this channel. It seems clear to me that for whatever reason over the past few years, Jen Psaki just wasn't getting it. You know, even on the sort of optics sort of stuff where she was referring to the James Bond franchise's content to Barbara Broccoli, that is worrying in and of itself. Ultimately, her missteps just became one too many, and she had a power-hungry senior above her who wanted creative teams to report directly to him. And she just kept making mistakes and missteps. And that power-hungry guy eventually went, I can seize on this. I can do what I want now. And as a result, Amazon Studios, film and TV, will now report directly to Mike Hopkins, which removes a level of, bureaucracy that was Jen Psaki, which in a way, I don't really have an issue with them removing that, because ultimately I don't really see what her role was at a certain point. Yeah, I'm tempted to say that I think in some regard this was probably for the right, but it's so early on that I don't think we can say for certain that that is the case. It feels quite astronomical that Amazon has purchased MGM, then has purchased James Bond, and has now fired the woman who apparently was getting it wrong, and was apparently getting James Bond wrong, and apparently was rubbing the Bond producers the wrong way. So this is all very interesting, and this all to me points to some sort of shift within Amazon. This is all just speculation right now, and it is going to take at least a couple weeks to see what comes about. We're not going to see a James Bond casting until at least maybe 5-6 months. I think it's going to take at least a couple months for them to get their feet under them, choose a director, then choose, presumably the actor after that. But we will start to see which direction is Amazon moving in by the end of the year. And I think that ultimately it is with Bond at its heart. And it remains to be seen whether they operate like an old school studio who doesn't actually greenlight that much, but when they do, it is either guaranteed to be a commercial success, it's guaranteed to be an achievement with prestige and dignity and respect, or are they going to continue to go down the streaming service route and just use Bond as sort of a draw? But with Jen Psaki's firing, I'm tempted to say that it goes the other way. But it remains to be seen. Thank you for watching this. It's obviously a bit rushed because of my fuck up. That won't happen again, hopefully. I promise. But thank you for watching anyways. I hope you enjoyed. Have a nice day.